Hello and welcome back. Tonight I'm going to be doing a painting in gouache. I'm going to be painting this rather lovely picture by a Facebook friend of mine called Jacqui Parsons, and this is Llynnau Cregennen. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, it's one of the many lakes in Snowdonia. It's just underneath Cader Idris, and it's got a boathouse over there. It's got a boat over here, which probably came from the boathouse. It's got a tree which I'll faff about with. Lots of rocky bits, a lovely craggy bit there, and there we go. That's the painting I'm going to do. As I said, I'm going to be doing it in gouache. And gouache is, I always say, it's watercolour on steroids. I'll digress a little bit. I'll talk about it more as I'm painting. But gouache is one of the very few painting mediums where you actually need to get good stuff, because cheap gouache just doesn't work. It's full of rubbish. All of this is Winsor & Newton designers gouache. It's not cheap, but it lasts a hell of a lot longer than any cheap gouache that you try to use, because it's so highly pigmented. You can thin it down and thin it down. I'll go through the palette. I've got what I call my full palette out here, and I'll explain it a bit. Here I've got my primaries, 2 of each: lemon yellow, processed red, alizarin crimson, ultramarine and processed blue. Sometimes they're called process, sometimes they're called primary, but basically that is almost pure blue, that's pure red, that's pure yellow, that's a little bit greener, that's a little bit bluer than that, and that red is a little bit more purple than that red. So I can do all sorts of different colours with those. Actually, I can mix anything with just those, but I'm not going to. Titanium white, always use titanium white. It's brilliant for mixing or as a standalone white. If you use flake white, it's not as thick and it doesn't cover as well. I'll do more of that later. That is mid-grey number 4, which I find very useful for rocky bits. Naples yellow, yellow ochre, raw sienna, raw umber, burnt umber. Those are my true earths, from there to there. White's totally neutral, that grey's neutral. So up to there we've got earth colours. That's sepia, that's indigo, that's sap green, and that is cobalt violet. I use, when I mix colours with primaries, I use these to knock them back. I find sepia and indigo are absolutely brilliant for taking the power out of strong colour, and so that's what I use there. Now, I'm not going to talk any more about stuff. I'm going to get started on the interesting bit. There's the drawing. I've already drawn it out, because one of my heroes, Charlie Evans, always starts his videos with him drawing them out, and I'm not that good a drawer. I can draw perfectly well, but I am not as confident as Charlie. He just goes, oh, it goes up there and it goes down there. I can't do that. So I've drawn it out beforehand, lots of rubbing out, lots of putting it right, and there it is now. While I'm painting on, don't know if you can hear that, it's a piece of mount board. It's actually a piece of mount board that I cut out of a bigger piece of mount board when I mounted a picture that was that big. So it's free. On top of it, I've given it a coat of gesso. You don't need to, but it gives it a little bit of tooth. You can paint straight onto mount board, but it will suck the water out, so it's best to give it a coat of something. Brushes, I use any sort of brushes. I use loads of different sorts of brushes. So I'm not going to bore you with all the different brushes I'm going to be using. I'll mention them if I do. Okay, I'm going to mix a blue for the sky, and I'm going to use the primary blue. You don't need a lot of water with gouache. What I've done with these is I have given them a spritz with my little spritzer before I start, like that. Gouache paints will reactivate once they've been dried out. Not as well as watercolours, but it's always best if you're going to reactivate them to give them a good spray and let it soak into them so that they're nice and thick but still liquid. I know what I mean. Okay, now wash the brush, dry the brush. I'm using one of these little triple pop things that you get off Tinternet. Handy because you've usually, if you use it properly, which I rarely do, you end up with 1 pot of manky water and 2 pots of clean water, but I usually end up with 3 pots of manky water. So there we go. Bit of depth, bit of white into the blue. See, I've got manky blue now, manky white. There we go. That's a sort of sky blue. A bit more blue. I'll put it back down. I'll leave that where you can see what I'm doing with the mixes. And I say that is primary blue or process blue, one of the two. They're the same colour, they just have different names on the tubes. As I say, they're all Winsor & Newton, they're all artists, well, designer gouache. And they're my favourite gouaches. For some reason, I'm not so keen on Dolellau. I like Dolellau in a lot of things, but I find this gouache is the best in the world. Well, that I've tried. And as I say, they're not over cheap, but the problem with gouache is the way designer's gouache is made is it starts off with pigment which is ground very, very finely, and then it's mixed with gum arabic, so it's the same as watercolour but with finer pigment and really good quality gum arabic. And then what happens after that is they do it all over again. They mix some coarser gouache, some coarser pigment, add that to it, so that you end up with a really highly pigmented, luscious paint. And it really is. I love gouache paint. I've been painting with gouache on and off for the last 64 years, something like that. I first got gouache when I was 11. I got Tube of Reeves poster paints, which is poor man's gouache, but I was lucky in that it was the Reeves poster paints that I got, because they are, or they were, pretty damn good. And they lasted me for ages. I got another set when I'd used them all. Before that, I'd been using kids' watercolour in, you know, the little pans that you got when you were kids off Santa, and quite frankly, they weren't very good at all. They were really pale and were hardly any pigment at all. And then I got these Reeves ones, and they were fabulous. And then I did a lot of stuff in them right the way through my teens, when they were fairly popular because of the 60s style of painting, which was very solid colour. And so I used them a lot. And then when I was 13, I got my first lot of oils, and then I really started going over to oils. There, we've got a sky. Wash the brush. Add some white, or pale blue as it is now. Splodge it in. See how thick and luscious it is. Now you can't do that with cheap gouache. Now I'm going to lighten it towards the horizon. It will pick up. Taking my glasses off to do this because I'm going in a bit close. I'll try and keep my head out of the picture. Now, because I'm putting this on top of wet gouache, I will pick up the colour underneath, and I'm doing that on purpose this time. I'm scrubbing it so it will pick up the blue and meld it together. And I'll take that up into some clouds. So there, we've got that going away into the distance. And I'm going to start building some clouds into it now. Just white. I'm using it almost like oil paints. And yet you can, and I will, use it almost like watercolours as it gets lower down. Now, sorry Jackie, this isn't your sky at all. It's a different sky. Because I can never see the point of copying photographs exactly when you've got a photograph. You don't need a copy of it. or if you want a copy of it, you can just do it on your computer, which is a lot easier and quicker than faffing about with a paintbrush trying to get it exactly the same. Okay, a little bit more blue down towards the horizon. Don't know what time of year it was when you took this, Jacqui, but you don't get that much sunshine over there in the west of Snowdonia. You were very lucky. Cregennen, that's the name of it. Lots of fluffy clouds. Clean the brush. Put my specs back on. Now I shall add some of this neutral grey into that, just to give some underbelly to the clouds. You can do this by mixing ultramarine in any set of paints. Ultramarine and raw umber will give you a very pale grey. If you mix it with white, it'll give you a fairly dark grey otherwise. Okay, touch more of the blue and the grey. Put a touch of the raw umber in as well. There, got the sky more or less done. I might do a bit more to it later on. Use the same blue. I'll add some of that grey to it for the distance to knock it back. Some of the white. And we'll put the far side. Now the thing about gouache is you can paint over it with more gouache. It doesn't necessarily have to stay where it is, because you paint light on dark and dark on light any way you want with gouache, like acrylics or oils, except that if you scrub too hard you will pick up the colour underneath. I'm using the chisel edge of the brush, and I'm going sideways with the horizontal strokes to get differences of colour, because it's Snowdonia, it's windy, goes with the territory, so there will always be, you very rarely get a mirror-like reflection, you usually get ripples. This palette, by the way, I've had for quite a while, quite cheap, off Amazon I think. There's a pack of 3. One like that, one which was a flat white plastic palette, and the other one has got less. I think it's got 6 or 8 down there and some more mixing wells. They're just variety. I think they're about 12 quid for the 3. I'm a bit of a gear junkie. Okay, this is by no means finished, by the way. There'll be a lot more going on top of it. I'm just getting the main areas in. Where's my squirter? That one will do. The problem I have with my studio here is that when I'm doing videos I have fairly heavy duty lights on, and it gets pretty warm and it tends to dry the paint out. Right, that's that. Now I'm going to do the great humpy mounty thing. Some of the blue, the pale blue, I mix some of the sap green, still using the same brush. This is a Rosemary & Co. Pretend Sable. Very good brush. Luckily I had a gouache set for Christmas a few years ago, and they're there from Rosemary & Co. It cost my dear lady wife quite a lot of money, but while I'm up here I'm out of her way. Good brush because it holds a chisel edge beautifully. A touch more yellow ochre, touch more white. This is a long way away, so the colour will be filtered through what, a couple of miles of dead skill cells and insects and all sorts of stuff floating around in the lower atmosphere. Which is what we call aerial perspective. It's why colours get less intense the further away they are. The more manky air you put between you and something, the less bright the colours will be. You don't need to use too much water with gouache. You just keep your brush damp rather than wet. It's a bit whiter, a bit, not whiter, lighter. Bit of Naples yellow into it. Very handy colour, Naples yellow. It takes intensity out beautifully just by adding it to greens and greys, and yet it doesn't freeze it too much, doesn't make it too cold is what I'm trying to say. Now further over, almost hidden behind a tree, we've got another humpy bit. More blue. Too much water. Now I've made that a little bit bigger because I'm going to shove a tree in front of it, well, some branchy bits in front of it. The more my pale colour. Okay, that's there. Now I'm going to put the half-inch flat back. I'm going to use this brush, which I absolutely love. It's an Egbert, a very long, soft. It's the Rosemary & Co. Evergreen. It, again, it's pretend sable, but listen, I don't know if you can hear that, but it goes boing, boing, boing and comes straight back. And I'm going to use that as I come further forward here and put some trees. Clean water into there. Start off with the green. Put some of the indigo. Indigo makes beautiful dark greens. And got some trees. Now I'm just dancing over this. You saw me put it down, so it's still wet, but I'm just dancing the tip of this eggplant over the top of it. And they are right down behind this little bit of a headland. And already they're sticking out from there. An eggplant, by the way, is a very long filbert. I just love the name. Okay, now I'm going to mix that into the other greens, so we've got a half and half, and we'll put in all the bushes and trees around the boathouse. And put some stuff along the edge. Now I need to get some sunshine on that far thing. There's a little bit of white there. Some Naples yellow. And into that we'll put a touch of the green. Yes, I was going to talk to you about buying gouache if you haven't already. I would tend to avoid buying sets of any sort of paints, because sometimes you get colours you never use and they're just sat there. What I would advocate is starting off just getting a few tubes, just get the primaries, a tube of white. I mean, you don't need all the primaries, you just need a yellow, a red and a blue, and maybe sepia or raw umber and a big tube of white. That's all you really need, and you can make anything with those. Touch of lemon yellow into that. There's far too much water in it. What I thought was white paint was actually a blob of water with white paint in it. So right, there is a light bit going across there and there. Now I'm just doing this very, very gently because I want it to sit on top and dry. Because it's opaque, so it will sit there, and the lightness will give you some sort of form to the grass. What I'm doing is putting some form into the mountain before I actually add the outcrops. I want it to have a shape, so it's light and shade. Now I need a little bit of middle dark, and because there's bracken in it, I'll put a touch of burnt sienna. And just in there you've got a glacier hole, or, as I once told my daughter when she was but a child, an Australian mountain. The picture, by the way, is about just over 8 by 10, because a piece of mount boards that I cut out for a picture that was just over 8 by 10. And there you go. Got a little bit of shape, some more dark tree bits. Don't know how long ago it was that Jacqui took this, but guarantee the trees are different now, so it doesn't matter. It's another thing about copying paintings exactly. No, copying photographs exactly. A photograph is 1/200th of a second, and everything changes immediately. The wind changes, the light changes, and if the wind changes and the light changes, all the colours change. So it's pointless doing it exactly the same. Well, it's not pointless, it's an academic exercise. And I'm just a grumpy old git who likes doing things their own way. So there we go, we've got bits there, we've got that going down to the sea, well, down to the lake. Now I want some dark on that side. Ah! just dampening that edge there, same as you do with watercolour. Right, okay, we've got that. I'm going to use a little pointy brush to put the rocks in. And not a very little one. What'll I use? I'll use you. This is one of my favourite brushes. It's a Spanish brush, lovely. Begins with N. Can't remember the rest of it. I love them. Escoda, that's the word I'm looking for. Start with the grey. Touch of burnt umber. So that is the mid-grey 4, touch of raw umber and touch of Naples yellow, a bit of white in it. So that'll thicken it up. Okay, one of the things I like about this brush is I think it's about a number 6, but it comes to a beautiful little point. All the craggy bits. When this is totally dry, I'll put little bits of light and shade in it as well. With gouache, you will always find that the lights dry a little bit darker and the darks dry a little bit lighter. It's a bit like watercolour. Well, it is watercolour, but it's very thick watercolour. And it's opaque rather than see-through, because most watercolours are transparent, or at least translucent. There, I'll leave that. There's another dark bit there. I'll use a touch of the sienna, burnt sienna into that dark colour will give me a sort of dead bracken colour from a distance. I don't know if anyone's interested, but one of the things I am going to do is revamp my Patreon channel, which I do apologise to both of you who are still members. I have let fall into disrepair over the last year or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to revamp it, and I'm going to start putting, I'm going to do a course in gouache painting, because I find it quite sad that it's fallen into so much, well, so few people do gouache and they think of it as being a poor relation, and it's beautiful medium, so versatile. I think it's probably my second favourite after oils. I love oils, and I do more watercolour than anything else for the simple reason I am determined at some point to do a watercolour that I like. So far they are very elusive things, watercolours I painted that I like. I'll do that with a teeny tiny brush after. Now let's start coming forward a bit. We've got those trees there. I'll put some very, very dark bits and some very, very light bits. Purple and green makes almost black. Because it mixes all the primaries together. So you don't really need black paint, you can always make black. And it tends to look better when you make your own. Some yellow to it for the other side. There. Now over here I'm going to mix a whole different lot of greens, because they are much brighter because they're in sunshine and they're closer to us. So this time, gosh, that was an earthquake, or me bashing the tripod, one of the two. Oh, how tragic, I dripped some water on my picture. Oh look, it doesn't matter. That's another thing that's wonderful about gouache. Okay, start with my primary yellow. I'm going to cheat and use the pre-mixed green. You can do it with, if I mix that and that, I'd get pretty much a pure green. I'm purposefully just scribbling this on because I'll be doing lots of different tones. And not much of it has been cropped by sheep, so you've got straggly bits of grass and stuff like that. Into that green I'm going to put some indigo to blacken it, darken it rather. Shadowy bits. I'm not trying to paint blades of grass. I'm painting light bits and dark bits and mid-tone bits. I'll put in the rocky bits later. Just right up to the masking tape so that when I take the masking tape off I'll have a nice clean edge. Because I'm not sure how I'm going to frame this. With gouache you can put it under glass, like most gouache you put under glass, the same as watercolour, but I'm going to use some lemon yellow into this paler stuff. Yes, most gouache, like watercolour, you put under glass, with a mat or mount, depending on what you call it. But you can, I only discovered fairly recently, you can treat it with dry wax and buff it, and it comes out beautifully. Haven't got any handy to show you, but they're lovely, and they are impervious to everything. Once you've buffed it, you can just stick it in a frame like an oil painting or an acrylic, and saves a fortune. Right, now we've got these big dead things growing here. They're quite dark, so I'll use the burnt umber which is a reddy brown. Into that I'll put some of the purple, which is pretty much exactly the right colour for these dead brackeny things that you get growing all over the place. Now, this bit I want fairly flat and light, because this is the bit that leads you down to the boat. See how I can pull the dry gouache into the yellow. Mixing it on the paper. Now, get rid of that. Find one of these smaller chisels. That's another one of my Rosemary & Co. Evergreen chisel flat. There we go. And with this, I'm going to make more thicker, bolder colour. Which is the grey and raw umber. I'm going to just lay them in nice and thickly. They may not be in the same place as yours, Jacqui. I went up last week and moved some of these boulders about. There's that big one there. There. Some purple and dark green to make a blackish. Some alizarin in it. Zing it a bit. And I want a nice clean green. To go out just above the boat. Right, now, got a dirty great big rock sticking out there. Now, we're getting somewhere now, aren't we? Little bit of doorway. Right, now get rid of that. Get rid of that. And I've done that because I want to put the water proper in. This is the mid-tone of the water, and some ultramarine. And touch of burnt umber. Some water because it's dried out a fair bit. I'm just gently laying on straight lines very thinly with the tip of the chisel. Leaving some of the white bits there, and I'll put some more light white bits on as well. They're getting softer as they get closer because I'm trying to create the impression that the water's moving. Right. Onto that I'm going to put some pure white. See how easily I can just lay the white on top of the dark colours. Right, leave that for now. Tiny little brush. Which I don't seem to have over here. That one will do. That is an angled one, so I'll just use the pointy bit there. Again with just the white. Tiny touch of that into it. Right, well I've got that. See, I'm trying to rush it and I'm messing up. The fiddly bits. I'm dry brushing here. I'm using pure yellow, and just to get some sunshine into this, I'm dragging it over the darks. Right, I'm going to do the boat. To that grey, put some of the blue. Another earthquake. Actually, I'm going to change the boat to blue. Makes it much easier. Not blue, a sort of greeny turquoisey blue. What that is a mistake. Probably even more of a mistake, because I think you've got my baldy head in there as well. But instead of dipping in the white, I dipped in the grey. Doesn't matter, because it might be a different boat even. Now a slightly darker dark for the inside. Pure white on the top of the rim. That'll do. Okay, there's a rock there. Right, now I'm going to do this branch here and use a number 2 rigger. You stick in a little bit of light on some of these twiggy bits. And now that one should do it. get my really good brush and bash it. So it's all bashed out of shape. There you go, got a bit of a branch coming out there. Where's that? There, my number 2 rigger. Now, I'm going to mix up some of the burnt sienna into that. Now, just purple in, some indigo, there's a big dark lump there, so I'll get some Naples yellow. Now that little brush, that one, so I want to put the pole Right, that's going to have to do. It's gone on for an hour and a half. It should have been 40 minutes, but never mind. I'll stop it now and take the tape off. Right, there we go. It's not a wonderful work of art, but it's an example of how to use gouache. There's a bit more I could do to it. I could put some more darks into the tree under there, and I probably will before I put it on the website, and I'll probably do a little bit more faffing with the grasses here. But basically what I've tried to do in this is show you how to use various techniques and brushes with gouache to try to get various different effects. So I'll go in a little bit. Basically that's all the water is. It's just horizontal splodges, for want of a better word, but if you pull back it looks a bit like water. The same with the tree, that's just stippling, that was just stippled. These are splodged in with thick paint, that was put in as washes, almost like watercolour. I've tried to use various different techniques to show you the versatility of gouache. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll pull back out, and there we go. Jacqui's boat. Toodaloo, see you again.